Michael Smith here. Today we're going to get an introduction to applied combatives training. Applied combatives training is something I've been working on for about 15 years, primarily for law enforcement, corrections officers, and the military. It's also obviously very useful for civilians in the sense of street fights and self-defense and stuff like that. It's a principle-based approach to combatives in the sense of we're not going to work on fancy techniques and anything too complicated. And some of the principles I think are very, very common sense and obvious. One of the primary fundamental approaches in applied combatives is what we call the primal sequence of combat. Every combative situation is going to go through what we would call a trajectory or an arc of interaction. The primal sequence of combat goes like this: closing, crashing, controlling, and then crushing. Closing is often what we refer to as bridging the gap, closing the gap, because inevitably you're going to have to touch each other, you're going to have to tussle, lock horns, and deal with that. Crashing is the locking horns moment when you're basically deflecting a weapon or striking the other person, and now you have to deal with their hands, their knees, and their structure to some degree. So we move from crashing, which we'll see in a few minutes is very obvious, into controlling. And controlling isn't necessarily holding them in some fancy headlock, although that would be nice. Controlling primarily is having a sense that their weight is off balance, or their weapons are being pushed away from you so that your opponent is busy getting their weapons back online towards you. As long as you can control the direction of their weapons or the stability of their structure, their central nervous system is just a step behind whatever you're doing, and in a funny way you can say now it's your turn. And in applied combatives, it's always your turn, or else you're losing. When it gets to from closing to crashing to controlling, assuming you've got a bit of their weight, a bit of their weapons, then we move on to crushing. And crushing is basically a quick way of saying delivering very specific amounts of violence. Now that probably doesn't sound very nice, and combat sometimes isn't very nice, but when you think about delivering violence, you're going to think about delivering two things: pain and actual damage. Now if you're in a situation where the threat is uncertain, it's a wedding, it's people screwing around a little bit or something like that, you don't have to be tactically decisive and destructive. You might just offer the person enough pain for them to demonstrate whether or not they're serious. If they're clearly serious, there's more than one person, you're protecting someone else primarily, then you have to do enough damage, enough harm to the other person's body, that they're now basically in a situation where they can't function completely. That could be a dislocated shoulder, enough pain to the testicles, enough pain to the throat, the eyes, other places like that. But it's more than just pain in the sense of ow, it's damage. That person is now no longer capable of continuing with all of their faculties, right? Primarily in applied combatives, we never think of ourselves as in a self-defense situation, because in a defense situation, you're psychologically losing already. So we want to think of this as, again, as a combative situation. And I think the clearest description of combatives is your role in society is now to move into harm's way and decisively cease the other person's capacity to continue to do harm in any way. Right? If you're a police officer, you're a corrections officer, obviously in the military things are a little more final. If you're a civilian and you're protecting a friend, your child, your spouse, yourself, somebody on the street or something like that, it's the same situation. You're moving into harm's way, and you decisively, in the least amount of time possible, have to cease the other person, the attacker's capacity to do harm. That makes sense? Okay, so that's the essence of applied combatives training, and most of what we do is based on hardwired instincts that are in your body already, so in a way they're free. You just have to get yourself into some environments, some training situations where those capacities are given back to you. Okay, now in applied combatives we say a closed fist is a condom. It's safer for the person you're hitting, right? Because the bones of your hand will probably break before anything severely happens to that person's head. And more importantly, and as a doctor I think this is really important to say, if you punch someone in the face, their teeth may break off and end up in your hand. And it's very common in the emergency ward to be pulling people's teeth out of your hand, and most people's mouths are full of bacteria. So if you want to punch somebody as hard as you can in the face, you're risking losing your hand. That's it. You can do the same basic movements like this. Okay, there's a threatening guy. And just come out with my hand like this and hit him, or just get my hand on his face and get ready to affect his structure as best I can. So it doesn't matter what you decide to do. So in the context of self-defense, or in the context of harming another person, I'm just going to put this out there for you. It's my experience, and I've been doing this for about 33 years now, that it's actually better karma. It's more compassionate when a person comes at you with violence to kick the shit out of them in the least amount of time possible. Now, you may be in your mind saying, you're an insane person, I better do something else with my time, turn off the screen quick. I'm just kidding. If you think about it, if you've ever lost a fight, and it went on for about a minute, and they got shots in, you got shots in, but you still lost, your mind is going, if I would have, I could have probably done better, I should have done this. Next time I see that guy in the street, I'm going to get my friends, and I'm going to hurt him for what happened to me. Right? If an attacker comes towards me, and I just go totally ballistic, carefully, I don't want to do more damage than I have to, I'm training myself to be careful but decisive. If I shut him down in a few heartbeats and scare the crap out of him, yelling and screaming in his face, he's going to go home going, thank God that crazy person stopped when they did. They're not going to go home going, I could have, would have, if I had a chance when he was up in that headlock and he was, he's going to just be going, holy shit, I just, attacked like some kind of CIA crazy person and they didn't kill me, thank God. Right? So that's in applied combatives, we want to train for that mentality, which is, the faster and more decisively you completely scare the crap out of the person, the less time they're going to be at home suffering through the memory of what I should have done. They will just go home grateful you didn't kill them. So, strange as it sounds, it's more compassionate to just get it over with absolute insane predatory animal behavior. Okay, so that's the class for today. Hope that's a good start for some of you.